All right, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Natalie from Domum. I have Jenna, our VP, Tim Alatori, our principal architect, and our guest, Nic Judd, a local realtor to the Rockland area. Um, in our last segment, we talked about the perfect storm, which is having time and a vision for opportunity and money, plus having all the elements working in your favor. Let's get going in today's segment. So we're going to hear from Nic and get some more insight about the housing market and how it's being affected by the coronavirus.
I was talking with another one of our developers today, and I was asking him if he'd seen some deals out there. And he works primarily on the commercial side of things. And he was saying that right now the commercial market's pretty stable. He hasn't seen any, nobody's trying to clear out inventory right now. On our residential side, though, Nic, we've seen a couple of our developers that we work with have pulled stuff off the market. We've seen projects being canceled, deals being pulled back on. So with that framework, what are you seeing? And maybe you could explain a little bit where your area of expertise is and what you typically work on.
Yeah, so like my introduction, I mainly handle residential home sales and purchases. And I had a great client email me yesterday and asked this exact question. And his thoughts were, well, now the housing market's going to go down sharply. Should I be ready to buy? And I fired back to him saying, well, I don't see a dramatic drop yet. And he fired back and quickly said, well, why? And I said, look, here, we need to look at what happened and what's currently happened. Prior to COVID-19, we had a strong seller's market, multiple offer situations, low inventory, lots of buyers, and houses were sold in a few days in a matter of oftentimes over list price. And then it happened. And what we're seeing now is the sellers that were getting on the market to just try and push the market, or what we call test the market, to see if they could sell their house for top dollar and then in return go buy something. Those sellers I see are all going on either a withdraw or a pause status, where they're just saying, hey, well, let me see what's going to happen here. I don't have to move. I'm not forced to move. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see a decrease in all those types of sellers, which is going to lower our inventory. On the other side of that coin is going to be the buyers. There's definitely going to be less buyers. And I'll use the example as I put a house under contract last week. And it was a great buyer. They're a VA buyer, but they found it difficult to purchase in a very hot market, because a VA loan is a challenging loan to use when you're competing with someone with cash or a sizable down payment. And so they just kept getting beat out left and right. But on last Friday, we were able to offer on a house $10,000 less than its list price and get it accepted with 100% VA financing. Now, this buyer isn't a move-up buyer. They're in a rental. They've been trying to buy a house for the last couple of years, and they are ecstatic to take advantage of the super low interest rates. So we're going to see these buyers that have been beat out over the last couple of years come out of the woodworks, I think. And I think what's going to happen with the decrease of inventory of homes that don't need to sell, and the buyers who didn't have a chance to buy and can still take advantage of all these awesome rates, are going to come out. So I think once we get through this, we're going to be a little stable. I'm optimistic that's going to happen. Secondly, I think we're going to have a decrease of both the sellers are going to go down and a decrease of buyers. And I think it's going to be proportionate, where it's going to make our market stable. And then it'll be interesting to see that after we get through it, will there be a surge back to what we were, or will we see a drop in the market as it changes? Because it's surely changing every day.
Yeah, and I think a big portion of that is going to be on what happens in the rest of the economy, right? So Obviously, healthcare isn't impacted by what's going on, but the hospitality and retail sector is significantly impacted right now. And I think it's going to be a factor of how many businesses end up going under over the next couple weeks, months, right? If you have a big decrease in the commercial sector from people not rehiring quickly after everything loosens up again, or just businesses going out of business, I think that's going to trickle over definitely into the commercial real estate market. But then also you're going to have potentially decreased mobility where people aren't looking to move. Maybe people are defaulting on mortgages, even though I think it was five banks right now have said that they're pausing mortgage payments for, was it 3 months? Or
Yeah, so kind of what the president's asked for is for the banks to put a pause on mortgage payments for up to 90 days, and a few banks have jumped on there. From what I can understand and what I've read, it looks like it's more of they're going to do a postponement where they're just going to take those 3 months of payments and add them onto the back of the loan, so they're not giving them away for free, which I think could help alleviate some stress. But it'll be real interesting over the next couple of months to see exactly what you're talking about, and that's what I just don't know quite yet, is how will this really affect the income of our current families and our communities, and how will the banks interact with them in making sure we don't cause another real estate crash.
Right. And in 2008, 2009, we were seeing just a rush of foreclosures, right? I mean, everybody was defaulting on loans. And leading up to that, there was a lot of speculative lending that was happening, right? People were lending under very shaky financial situations. And then when everything kind of started to head south, they couldn't make their payments and then just defaulting left and right. We didn't have that same run up into what's happening now. I think banks over the last decade have been a lot more cautious in lending. I know prior to this, I was trying to get a loan for a property, and they were putting me through the ringer. Every little thing was being scrutinized. Yeah. So I think from a mortgage standpoint, the mortgages that are out there are a lot more solid. The people who are invested in them are a bit more secure. So we shouldn't be seeing the same rush of bankruptcies and foreclosures. And I think coming into 2008, 2009, there were a lot of deals real estate wise just on all that whole foreclosure market.
Well, remember 2008, 2009, everybody was a investor, right? So a lot of the homes and the shaky loans that were done under the pretense of, I'm now a real estate investor. I've never bought a property before, and I just bought 3, and I'm going to make $1 million on appreciation. It didn't work. And so what's different in this scenario, like you were saying, Tim, is to get a loan over the last few years, they really are crossing their T's, dotting their I's, and taking a blood sample just to make sure you're the right person. So I don't think we're going to see the rapid default of payments, because these aren't investment properties we're talking about. These aren't an attempt to get rich. These are people's homes. So you're going to see them fight and struggle and really put up a fight with the banks. That said, I think the banks learned a valuable lesson too through 2008, 2009. I mean, I don't know if you remember, they started just foreclosing like crazy with the idea that they were going to get their money back.
Right.
And that backlash from the public backlash, all of a sudden they had to change something, and people lived in houses for up to 6 years without making any mortgage payments, and the banks weren't foreclosing because they didn't want the bad press.
Well, not only that, but then the banks were ending up with all these properties. Specifically 2008, 2009, it started loosening up later, but they had all these properties they couldn't sell.
Yeah.
So they've got the property back, but it's not.
Yeah. Now what? It's worth half as much.
Right. Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a different struggle here, and it's hard to gauge what that struggle really will be. It will be how fast we can get back to work, and how fast businesses will bring the employees back in at full pay and bring them all back in. And that's what will be the driving factor of our real estate.
Yeah, looking at the opportunity side for a savvy investor who's sitting on some capital and looking to potentially to invest right now, the people that are you're saying on the real estate side that what you're seeing are the people that are selling are the people that need to sell,
Yep.
right? So they're more motivated sellers. So as an investor wanting to get into that market, there's potentially, you're not going to be in that bidding war that we were in a couple weeks ago. Theoretically, you could get in a better price, like you're saying.
Yeah. And we're seeing that now. I mean, homes that were listed what I would thought was a fair price. And as Californians, we're kind of funny that we think if our house doesn't sell in 7 days, that there's a problem, which is really the reality. But we are seeing significantly decreases in prices that I thought, last week were fair prices. And now we're seeing, $10,000 being reduced for those who need to sell. And an investor who likes a specific area will now be able to save thousands on a particular home or a rental property. And I think you'll be able to get a good amount of rent will start to come back in as well. I mean, rents already are pretty strong, and I think they're just going to get stronger as people won't be able to afford their homes. They're going to have to make a choice and go rent again.
We're talking about investors, but there are a lot of new home buyers that are really seeing maybe some opportunities. Is there anything that you see that they could capitalize on if they're been looking at a property or a house for a long time, how to capitalize on that property and get a good interest rate, and how to own their own property for the first time?
Yeah, kind of like I was explaining the family that bought last week. They had been beat out time and time again. They've been actually looking for a couple of years. And each time they try to buy, it's, around the springtime when most people want to buy a house. And they're getting beat out by conventional lending and all kinds of other things. So the first-time home buyer programs, I think, are going to be a big step up. And we'll see a lot of first-time home buyers, people who have not entered into the market due to financial reasons, and or they just couldn't compete with the cash offer that we were seeing. Now they can come in and make an offer and probably get thousands off. Like the example that I did use, they were a VA buyer, which is 100% financing. It's a fantastic loan. It's a great benefit for our veterans. But it is a disservice when they're competing with other buyers because there's a few more red tapes. It's a little longer loan to get done. So as a seller, if you have to choose, if you get the opportunity to choose between a cash buyer, a conventional buyer, or a VA buyer, you're more likely to go after the cash or conventional. There's less red tape. They can close faster. There's more money down. But then that leaves the VA buyer with nothing and not really a way to compete. Well, now, if that's all that they have, they're willing to take that risk. And it's not a big risk. At the end of the day, the seller gets the same amount of cash between a VA conventional and a cash loan. It's still the same. It's just a matter of time. Well, if you can't choose and your only option is the VA buyer, take the offer and run. It's still cash in your pocket. And so we were able to negotiate we paid list price, but we also negotiated $10,000 of closing costs to be paid for the buyer by the seller. So it means the seller paid $10,000 for the buyer's closing costs. In reality, that's like a $10,000 price reduction, or because it's less cash out of a buyer's pocket. So if you don't have a lot of cash right now in your savings account or that kind of stuff, or money for a down payment, this market yields very well for you because you can have the sellers pay your closing costs, and you can get in with those FHA, 3.5% down programs, and even some of the first-time home buyer programs that can get you in as little as 1 to 0% down. So yeah, you're going to see those buyers are going to come out.
That's really interesting because even in 2016, when we were getting our home, we were attempting to do the VA loan, and we found a home not even on the market, and there was like 6 or 7 people putting in bids. So we quickly applied for a different loan, and then we were actually able to get the home, but it was just kind of luck of the draw.
Yeah, but it was challenging, right?
Oh yeah, it was challenging.
And so
they were like, we don't have time for these extra inspections that would be needed. So it was just like either switch the loan, or if one of these other 6 people bidding on a house that's not even on the market yet, so.
Yeah, and that's a sad thing in the fact that you weren't able to utilize that benefit because it's an awesome loan. Which is there's other ones that are available to all the public, not just a VA loan. There are a couple other different first-time home buyer programs that are out there that allow you to do 1% down. But if a seller has a choice to choose between the different types of loan, they're going to take the one with the less amount of risk. Well, if you only have one to choose from, the seller's going to be more willing to work with that particular buyer. And like I said, those risks really aren't that great. But if you have a choice, you take the less risk, right? If you don't have a choice and you take a VA buyer and it closes, the money to the seller is exactly the same. But so that's what I'm excited to see, those buyers who have tried and failed over the last 3 years where we've had a real strong market. I think you're going to have an opportunity here to take advantage of both getting closing costs paid for them, getting the sellers to do a little bit more repairs, and enjoying a really good interest rate because they're still low.
So I should probably throw in here, if anybody's downloaded our directory of experts off of our website, Nic Judd is listed as our realtor of choice, our recommended realtor. But if somebody hasn't downloaded that, Nic, how do people get a hold of you if they're interested in buying or selling in the what's your service area? Sacramento region, just Rockland? How far do you go?
So most of my area is going to be the Lincoln, Rockland, Roseville, and Loomis areas. I pop into Penryn and a little bit into Sacramento, but I really strongly know the Lincoln, Rockland, Roseville, and Loomis areas. That's kind of where I spend most of my working time, and that's where I live. So I know it really well. If they wanted to reach out to me, my cell, of course, is easiest, which is 916-572-9610. Can also jump on my website, which is legends with an S, legendsregroup.com. And from there, I'll have all the way you can contact me. Facebook Messenger, pretty much any way you want to reach out, we can be reached.
Do you have a receptacle for carrier pigeons? Like if we sent you...
Not yet, but I'm trying to learn my smoke signals so I know those instead.
Nice. So I've got one more question for you, and maybe Natalie and Jen have another one, but if I was to put you in a difficult position, let's say you've got your fortune teller hat on right now. We assume best case scenario that the market's going to rebound back, everything's going to be great here. What time frame would you put on, again, it's March 27th, who knows what's going to happen on March 28th, but on March 27th, 2020, what time frame do you think investors or home buyers have to enjoy this market before everything starts to go back to normal?
I think you're looking now. The nice part about it is we are doing some cool things with technology where we're looking at, on all of my listings, I do what's called the Matterport camera, which is a 3D tour, very similar to that of Google Street View. You actually can walk through a house just virtually. The other thing is you reach out to myself or any other professional. We're doing FaceTime videos, Zoom calls like this at the properties where you can view them virtually first, and then just drive by the property. If you like the area, we can still write offers. We can still do everything pretty much virtually, and then you kind of show up right before and take a look. But I would be looking now as we're seeing the decreases now, and I think if it does flip on and all of a sudden we all go back to work and the market starts to heat up, it's not going to take long. It'll go real fast.
Yeah. And it's interesting you talk about the virtual thing, because I think a lot of buyers, especially first-time buyers, might be hesitant to do that. But we work with developers. There's one great company we work with, Salt and Stone, based in Sacramento, and they'll be traveling, they'll be gone, and their realtor does a virtual tour with them of the house, and they feel like they're there, and they buy it, without actually stepping into it, and it works out great. So if anybody's hearing this and they're like, oh, I really would like to see it, like Nic's saying, at least get an offer on it, and then you can, if it's accepted, then you have your due diligence period where you could then set up an appointment to walk through it.
And that's what we did on the last one. We got them in contract. Then once we get the inspection, we had the sellers out of the inspection. The buyer got to come look at the property physically and do other things. There's so much you can do and see with it. What I teach all my buyers is what you need to do is get the property tied up, because then it's yours. I use the analogy of like making a reservation at a restaurant, which I don't know if we're going to remember that in years to come, but we did go to restaurants, and we'd make a reservation, and you'd make it like for, next Saturday. And up until Saturday, you could cancel that reservation, no problem. You could look at their menu, you could see what they had, and there was no cost. Writing an offer is the same way. In fact, even during your inspection time frame, it's the same thing. You can spend all your time prepping and looking at the pictures. You could go and visit the property after that, even after you're under contract. And if you're not happy with anything, you can just back out. There's no cost. So you got to not be afraid to make the offer and to get into a contract, because there are inspection contingencies and other contingencies that protect you in the event that isn't the perfect house for you. And Phil, I don't know if you know about my guarantees that I have. As a realtor, I have a guarantee that says if you're not happy with your home that you purchased through me, I'll either buy that home back from you within a year or I'll sell it for free. So I want to make sure you get the perfect house for you, because I have some skin in the game as well.
That's a pretty big guarantee. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
What can we expect for the market with the interest rates dropping for 0.25? Like, do you think the interest rates are going to level back out where they were, or do you think they're going to stay that way?
I think they're going to have to stay that way for a little while until we really see the light at the end of this tunnel. I think that we're going to have to encourage people to purchase and to come out and buy. And I think that's what we're going to need to do. The nice thing, and I've talked about this often, especially with someone who's waiting, they'll say, well, I'm going to wait. And I go, okay, well, if you wait, say 6 months, and the market drops, $50,000, that's a nice bonus. But if the rates go up to 4 or 5, and you could have had half the rate, your payment is going to be the same. So unless we're planning to take this property and sell it for a profit in 1 to 2 years, then maybe you should wait. But if you're planning to buy and live in a place like most people are doing for 2, 3, 5, 6 years, having a low interest rate is probably going to cost you the same as having a high interest rate at a lesser price. Does that make sense?
Right.
You could take advantage of the low interest rate, have the same monthly payment, and buy now, instead of gambling of what may or may not happen.
And we're seeing a lot of people refi right now too, with those interest rates dropping.
Absolutely. And that's the part I was talking to about a little bit of the sellers who came on the market at the beginning of the year, quote unquote, testing the market. Well, if I could sell my house for $600,000, I'll sell it, even if the house is only worth $550. You're going to see a lot of those sellers just pull their houses off the market and just refinance and stay, because they don't have to sell. They just wanted to sell and do something bigger. Well, if I can stay in my house and have a lesser payment, well, let's just refinance. And now all of a sudden, what that does is it drops the inventory down, right? So now we have less homes available. And if buyers can now buy, rates are still good, I think it's going to be proportionate, and we'll see a stable market come through out of this.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time and giving us this insight. And I think for our next segment, we are going to be either bringing in a financial advisor or a contractor. So
stay tuned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right,
Talk to you
thank
guys
you so
later.
much.
Have a good one.